Pierre Poilievre, thank you so much for joining us. It's a pleasure to speak with you again.
It's good to be back. Thanks for having me, Jasmine.
Anytime. I was chatting with the U.S. Ambassador Pete Hoekstra a few days ago, and he had made a comment to me that is something I have at times, to an extent, shared, and definitely one that I've heard a lot of other people making as well when it comes to counter tariffs. And the way that he had described it was essentially you had the Liberal government who said, oh, yeah, we're just going to counter tariff. And then the other party said, yeah, me too. And I'm wondering, when it comes to counter tariffs, the economic situation that Canada is in right now, and the Conservatives initially taking a somewhat similar stance on the matter in retaliation, now that we are so many months past those initial threats and concerns and really dealing and grappling with the economic fallout and reality, as well as frustration, I would say, from the White House, do you still feel as though that sort of a response is our best way out of this? Or do you think that something should change, perhaps not only in strategy, but also in rhetoric?
Well, when it comes to counter tariffs, I think they should be pinpoint and narrowly targeted at things that will have maximum impact on the American side of the border and minimum impact on the Canadian side. Because of course our businesses have to supply their operations with parts and machines, and we don't want Canadian tariffs to actually drive up their cost of production and make them more unproductive. So I believe that with the counter tariffs, they should focus on things we don't need, make ourselves, or that we can import from abroad, other overseas. I do think we need to discourage American tariffs on Canada. Regardless of what you think about our government and the U.S. administration, the bottom line is that the American tariffs on Canada are unjustified. We absolutely do need to strengthen our military and bolster our border. That was true prior to President Trump taking office. But those concerns don't justify the tariffs that we have faced from the United States. As for the rhetoric, the test that I would use is what is the most effective way to get results in this dispute. And so we shouldn't be doing it for theater or drama, as Mark Carney and the Liberals have done. We should be doing it we should be choosing our words in a way designed to get the best results so our workers can keep their jobs, grow their paychecks, and have an affordable cost of living.
The easy scapegoat with this one has very much been Donald Trump. But in reality, then this is something Mark Carney admitted to himself along the campaign trail during the federal election. Canada has been on a downward trend for the last decade across nearly all sectors. And notable that for a number of years there, Mark Carney was the financial advisor to Justin Trudeau. And to me, a real leader would admit failure and they would scrap the bad bills. They would do what was necessary, not ideological, to rebuild our economy before there is nothing left to save. And you've seen instead the Liberals focus full-heartedly on Trump. It's Trump, Trump, Trump. Everybody boycott Trump, not to actually repeal the bad laws or cut the red tape. And it's been really fascinating to me to witness so many people who will cheer on the Carney Liberal government at every opportunity they can when they're announcing a new subsidy to an industry. And sure, of course, those industries need help. Of course they do. But nobody is addressing the actual cause of any of these problems. They're addressing the symptoms and the Band-Aids to them. And so I'm curious for you, especially being where you are right now in Battle River-Crowfoot, you've been exploring so much more of the prairies. And what are your thoughts on the very real impact that so many Canadians are facing as a result of this inaction, and the fact that in the last couple of weeks, the only press conferences that the Liberal government has given us, it has not been of new deals. It hasn't been of new trade diversification. It's been nothing of the sort. And it has only been announcements of more debt-fueled taxpayer subsidies to the very industries of whom their policies are kneecapping.
So you covered a lot of different things in that. So I would let's address the liberal policies. So, yes, it's true that our industries are facing tariffs from China and from the United States, which the Prime Minister promised he was going to get rid of through his master negotiating skills. Since he took office, those tariffs have actually gone up. But ironically, the penalties that our industries are paying are imposed by the Liberal Party. There's the industrial carbon tax, which raises the cost of steel production, aluminum production, oil and gas, cement, fertilizer production, and drives that production south of the border. There's the Liberal ban on pipeline and rapid mine approvals through C-69. There's the ban on shipping oil off the North BC coast. Those things all drive billions of dollars out of Canada to the United States. In fact, there's been $500 billion more Canadian investment go south than there has been American investment come north since the Liberals took office. And all of the same policies that caused that massive waterfall of investment to leave remain in place months after Mark Carney took office. In fact, he's worsened them with increased bureaucracy. Now, you touch on another really interesting point, which is this idea, this strange idea. I describe it like a doctor who administers a poison to his patient. And then he says, well, I'm now going to give you an antidote to save your life. And the patient says, well, why did you poison me? And he says, well, so that I could give you the antidote and save you. Well, so the Liberals hit an industry with high taxes and regulation. They cripple it. And then they say, oh, but now we've come to save you with a big fat taxpayer-funded subsidy. Why not do none of the above? Why not reduce the taxes, red tape, and regulation, and then get out of the way and let the free market and free enterprise produce the wealth through competition and choice? And the answer is, of course, then there would be no role for the Liberal. They have to stop you from doing things so that then they can subsidize you to do them. I think, speaking of Americans, Ronald Reagan said, if a Liberal sees something moving, they tax it. If it still moves, they regulate it. When it stops moving, they subsidize it.
It is really, it's so discouraging. And I think for people such as yourself and myself, we're kind of in this world all the time where we can see these things. And it's almost as though once you see it, you can see through it every single time. And it's just so very deeply concerning to me that throughout all of this, I honestly am just dumbfounded that it has been so many months and to date, not a single policy has been reversed. Mm-hmm. Not a single step towards actual prosperity and growth and our future has happened. And yet everybody wants a pat on the back when they take another taxpayer-funded trip to Europe to go and have a discussion there. And then Europe turns around and signs a major deal with the USA as an example. How is that for you, being so immersed in it, to see things like that? How does that make you feel? And what kind of hope is there for Canadians when it's just so routine, the same process, the same failures over and over again?
Well, it's frustrating for me traveling across the incredible region of Battle River-Crowfoot because I see the people who are affected. Obviously, there are farming communities, and farming goes up and down with commodity prices and weather. But a lot of these towns relied on oil and gas jobs. So the men and women you meet on the doorsteps in Provost, Hardisty, Coronation, Castor, Consort, Camrose, they'll often tell you that they either do or used to work in oil services, and they're tradespeople. And a lot of these towns are really suffering because there's just not enough work. Now, business should be booming. I mean, oil towns across America are roaring because the Americans have doubled oil production in the last 15 years.
Sorry, to the point as well, where there's many states that don't even collect income tax from their citizens anymore.
They don't have to, but here in Canada, we're of course paying more for tax than we do on food, clothing, and shelter combined. But I meet people who are in really rough straits. I met a guy I think he was in Towfield, and he has to share a mobile home with his buddy. They're in their 50s. But all they can afford is $400 each in order to survive. Now, these guys with this skill level and their work ethic, they should be able to afford each their own beautiful home. There's lots of space. But the problem is there's not a lot of work. And the government is attacking one of our best and biggest sectors. And we could unleash a boom that would enrich the tradespeople and then all of the community around it. The restaurants, the little shops on the main streets of small towns could roar. We could bustle with activity if the government would cancel the industrial carbon tax, get rid of the ban on pipelines, get rid of the emissions, so the production cap on energy. We could really unlock an incredible wealth, and it would be real people in these towns whose lives would be so much better, whose kids would be able to grow up and dream of raising families in beautiful, well-funded communities that have great infrastructure. But unfortunately, the attack on our resource sector has really crippled a lot of these communities. I'm though inspired though, when you meet these people, Jasmine, they are determined. They don't get down, they don't complain, they just keep marching forward. And that inspires me. I want to keep fighting for them. I'm not going to give up, just like they don't give up.
And I know you somewhat alluded to it already, but perhaps you could expand on it a little bit more when it comes to just the constant amount of corporate welfare handouts that the Liberals love giving to absolutely everybody, from the industries, as we said, that, are failing as a result, not because what they have isn't good enough, but because of the policies and legislation that is just totally bottlenecking them. Why is it, do you think, that is how the Liberal Party of today operates, where it is so much more of a, hey, we're going to talk about this crazy crisis and hinge moment all the time, but we're not actually going to do anything to get us out of that. We just want to keep talking about it, though, and then keep making it worse by giving you this money that's seemingly coming out of nowhere. And oops, we did it again. What do you think is truly the hypothesis, I suppose, behind why the party is operating the way that it does, especially in today's times, especially given Mark Carney and what he ran on during the election, and how so much of that, at this point at least, appears to be like it was nothing but fraudulent?
So the hypothesis is more power and control for them and less freedom and independence for everyone else. Let me just tell a quick story to illustrate it. So in South Ottawa, there's a place called Woodsource, and 60 years ago, when they went to build their warehouse, it took 1 week and a one-page application form stamped by an engineer. More recently, they went to build a new warehouse, very similar to the old one. It took 7 years and $600,000 to get the permits. They had to fill out a report for every little poplar tree they planned to remove for that warehouse. And when they went to see their local Liberal minister, he said, well, I'm sorry you had to wait so long and pay so much, but maybe I could get you a grant to help cover those costs. But why wouldn't you just get the hell out of the way and let them build the damn warehouse in the first place? The other one's still standing. It didn't fall on anyone's head, even though it only took a week and a page to approve. And the answer is that if they just got out of the way and let the lumber mill build its warehouse, then there would be no role for that Liberal minister. He would be irrelevant. And the businessman would be doing it all by himself with his workers. And that's the thing Liberals hate the most. They need to be in the middle of everything. They take it away, and then they make you go to them begging for it back. You have to kneel before the altar of Caesar in order to get back what is yours. It is about economic control. They believe in the Beijing state control approach of the Chinese state control capitalism, where the government controls everything. Yes, there's capital. It's just that it's directed by the state. And I believe in free enterprise, where it's the voluntary exchange of work for wages, product for payment, investment for interest that allows everyone to get ahead. And the reason everyone is better off in a free enterprise environment is because everybody's agreeing to do what's being done. If I have an apple and you have and I want an orange, you have an orange and want an apple, we trade. We still have an apple and orange, but we're both better off because each has something more valuable than they had before. That is why when you buy a coffee, you say thank you, and the lady behind the till, she also says thank you, because you have the coffee which you valued more than the money. They have the money which they value more than the coffee. But when you fill out your tax form, notice how you never say thank you, because that transaction was done by force, not by free choice. We need an economy driven by free choice and free enterprise. And economies that have done that all around the world, it could be Switzerland, Singapore, now Ireland. Look at Ireland, how rich it has become. They are driven by a free enterprise system that gets politicians and bureaucrats out of the way so customers, workers, and entrepreneurs can freely exchange and create prosperity.
It's funny hearing you say that story. I'm not sure if you've read the whole thing, but Mark Carney's book Values, I've read it twice. The second time I did with a pen and a highlighter.
Yeah.
And the vast majority of that novel is very much that. It's very much, we know better than you. So do what we say is best because we're saying it's best. And it is really scary. And I think one of the reasons too why I'm so interested in politics is largely due to the fact that government dependency scares me more than anything else in the world. And it's horrifying to see so many of the little trickles down of that so many Canadians are experiencing right now.
Well, there's an old saying that a government that is big enough to give you everything that you want will be strong enough to take everything that you have.
On that note, there's another topic that so many people have been discussing as of late, and that has to do with immigration when it comes to the government giving and taking to give. There's a lot of Canadians, and I've heard this from so many people about how the damage is done. There's no way to reverse course on this. It is what it is. What exactly would you say to some of those people when it comes to the mass immigration that is affecting so many sectors of our life? And also just the fact too that it has nothing to do with race. It has nothing to do with illegal immigration. It just has to do with capacity and not having enough and giving a false promise to individuals, and then also kind of destroying the promise that you had for your natural born citizens. What is your take on that? And recently as well, it was uncovered that the Liberals haven't updated any of the numbers in a long time. What do you think is going on there?
Well, it's really quite tragic because we had a great immigration system before the Liberals came along and totally destroyed it with a radical open borders experiment. They believe in the Century Initiative, which seeks, it's a group of multinational globalist corporations that have advised through, Dominic Barton and from McKinsey that Canada needs to have 100 million people, which is like tripling our population. And so they basically opened the borders to anyone. They stopped vetting people. They stopped doing a true criminal background check on people. They say, we do a criminal background check on them here. And if they haven't committed any crimes here, we let them in. Well, of course, they're not yet in Canada, so the criminal background check has to be done in the country of origin. And as a result, they grew the population 3 times faster than the housing stock. Well, we have a housing crisis. They grew it faster than the job market, and now we have a job shortage, particularly for our youth. Our healthcare system is now under strain, and we have 600 criminals that are on the loose and out of the government's sight. They're totally lost. Government doesn't know where they are in Canada, terrorizing communities. There are foreign nationals that are not Canadian citizens that are supposed to have been deported, but they're missing. And finally, to top it all off, the Carney government, not only have they kept all of Trudeau's numbers for immigration going forward, now they've taken the reporting offline, so you can't actually check out whether they're keeping their promises. So Carney's not better than Trudeau, he's worse. So the solution is that we have to bring down our population over the next several years, with more people leaving than coming. Those who are here on visas that expire, who aren't eligible for permanency, need to go, and if they don't agree, then they have to be deported. We need to track down those 600 criminals, kick them out of Canada. We need a firm rule that anyone who commits any crime while they're here as a visitor will be permanently ineligible to be an immigrant to Canada and will have to go home. We need to massively cut back on temporary foreign workers, international students, and stop the false and phony asylum claimants. And in doing that, we can bring the population down over the next few years while housing, healthcare, and jobs catch up. And then finally, we need a policy that selects the right people in the right numbers that serve our interests and put Canada first.
I saw that the Conservatives are proposing some new legislation when it comes to reform and sentencing, specifically as it pertains to non-permanent residents, temporary residents, people who are just here on vacay, even in some cases. And it blows my mind how the need for legislation like that and the reform even has to be brought to the table to the first place. Like the fact that, and I know I'm supposed to be interviewing you here, but now I'm having a TED Talk. But the
It's
fact
great.
that
Go on. I'm enjoying it.
the fact that there are people in this country who are given more leniency or more consideration simply because it could risk their potential to immigrate here permanently. It could risk that is so, for lack of better words, unhinged to me, because are those not the exact people who you actually don't want in your society? Because to me, anybody with a brain cell, it would be like if somebody comes in and they commit a heinous act or crime, or they're planning something, especially with a minor or a vulnerable person, and okay, you got caught. Thank goodness you got caught before you were granted citizenship. And instead, it's like, thank goodness you got caught so that we can make sure this doesn't interfere with you being granted citizenship.
Yeah.
Like,
so,
it makes no sense to me.
This is a judge who said that he was going to downgrade the conviction and I think the sentence of a visitor who came to Canada and is applying for immigration status, because the judge was concerned that if the offense was too high, then it would be make him ineligible and he would have to go back to where he came from. I mean, this is so ridiculous on so many levels. For one, I actually don't care what the criminal offense is. If someone does any crime while they're in Canada under the, under the criminal code, I'm not talking about an administrative offense, a parking ticket or speeding ticket, or they fill out a government form by accident. I'm talking about a crime of any kind. They shouldn't be in Canada. The second thing is that we shouldn't be reducing the sentences that people get based on protecting their ability to stay here or for any other reason. The conviction should be based on the evidence that the person committed the offense. So Michelle Rempel, our Conservative Shadow Minister of Immigration, has put forward a bill that would ensure that anyone who is charged with a crime should be forced to face the real sentence and the real conviction that the evidence provides, and the judges cannot downgrade either the sentence or the conviction to increase the likelihood of them succeeding in their immigration application. This is not about targeting law-abiding immigrants whom we love. It is about protecting Canadians against criminals who use the system against us.
On that note, I'm not quite sure if you had seen this, but there was a volunteer firefighter who ended up being convicted for starting dozens of fires once upon a time. And he had received, I think it was a couple hundred community hours or community service hours, something like that. It was a pretty lackluster penalty for what it was that he did and the harm that it did cause and potential harm it could have caused, similar to some of the issues that we've seen in many provinces, including the one that I live in at the moment, when it comes to fires. And when it comes to just the penalties and all of these things, it really blew me away that so many provinces now, if you're a firefighter, volunteer firefighter, and you end up getting charged for arson, you will get less time, less of a penalty than somebody who goes for a walk in the woods in Nova Scotia, let's say, right now. And all that to say, just to kind of lead into this, when it comes to the response, the fire safety response, the firefighting response, what is your interpretation? Where are people really failing right now on a government, federal, or even provincial level?
Let's start with arson. To begin with, we had just today a 20-year-old Newfoundland man was charged with lighting 3 fires around midnight in St. John's. And there's a 4th fire for which no one has yet been charged. But under our laws, if he's convicted, he'll probably have a slap on the wrist. He'd probably be out on bail in a few hours. And this at a time when there are fires raging across the country. Now, remember, there have been 100 churches burned to the ground. Federal government has basically said nothing about that because it's not politically correct to defend Christians against terrorism. Who's been in the slammer for that? That's a terrorist attack that's motivated by hate. So Conservative MP Mark Dalton introduced the Anti-Arson Act in the previous Parliament, which guarantees 5 years of prison sentence for the first offense of arson against a place of worship and 7 years for the second offense. Our platform proposed mandatory jail time for extortionists who use fire as their weapon. And we are proposing overall mandatory jail time for fires, for arson across the country. That will be one of the things we push for in the fall. We don't know the cause of all the fires. There's a lot of fires burning now. They might have varied cause. Some might be lightning. Some might be accidental human activity. But for God's sakes, if someone lights a fire that they know is ultimately going to lead to the evacuation of hundreds of families whose lives will be destroyed, that person should go to prison. We should throw them behind bars and throw away the key. And that's the change that we're proposing to the criminal code.
There's so many issues at the moment, and it's really disheartening that there also is so much silence around so many of them, which is one of the many reasons why I'm so honored that you joined me today. Thank you so much, Pierre Poilievre, and I wish you all the best in Battle River-Crowfoot.
Thank you very much. Enjoy your programming, and I look forward to getting back in the House of Commons and continuing the fight. Thanks a lot, Jasmine.